Hi guys, this is Vineet, and in today's video we will discuss about how you can shrink TempDB database inside SQL Server. Let's go to notes. So these are the notes which we'll go through. There will be theory. I would suggest you to please make a note of these notes, note down these points which are important by writing them out. Otherwise, if you need a copy of this notes as a PDF format, then what I would suggest is you can subscribe to my channel, and after subscribing you can send me a proof of subscription by copying in the section which is below my video. So basically, if you want copy of the notes that is accompanying this video as a PDF file, please subscribe to my channel and by clicking on the subscribe button. And below this video, so where is the subscribe button? It is below my video, so you can click on it to subscribe to my channel. And you need to take a screenshot of the subscription proof, which is example is given below. It will be like that. It is showing as subscribed if you have subscribed to my channel. Email me this screenshot on this email address, verma@gmail.com. Once I get the proof of subscription from your end, I will send you the PDF copy of the notes on the same email address. Otherwise, if you want to write down the notes, you can write down as well. But if you need a copy of these notes, please subscribe to my channel and send me the proof of subscription so that you can get a PDF copy of these notes in case you don't want to write the notes. Alright, let's go through these notes. So it is basically saying that below 4 options can be used. Give me a second, guys. Let me turn on the highlighter. So it is saying that below 4 options can be used to alter the size of TempDB database. So here we are modifying or shrinking the TempDB database. So 4 options are available. The first one is the alter database option. This statement can be used to shrink a TempDB. Next statement is you can use the DBCC SHRINKDATABASE command. Another command you can use is DBCC SHRINKFILE to shrink the individual file. The above one shrink the whole database, whereas the below one just shrinks the individual files for that database. And the fourth option is using the SQL Server Management Studio. You can shrink the size of a TempDB database. And we will find a table below here which is giving the options regarding those methods. So for an alter database, if I say it requires a restart of SQL Server, basically the services. So it gives complete control on the size of the default TempDB files. So TempDB files are tempdev and templog. These two are the files which are allocated to TempDB. So we can set the size of these files, the TempDB and the templog, using the alter database statement. And it requires a restart of SQL Server services. Another option is to use the DBCC SHRINKDATABASE, and it does not require any restart of SQL Server services, and it operates at the database level. So it shrinks both the files instead of individual files. And there's a DBCC SHRINKFILE option also available too if you want to shrink the individual files. So it let you shrink the individual files and no restart is required here. The next option is to use the SQL Server Management Studio, and no restart is required, and we can shrink database file through a graphical user interface here. So let's go to next point, which is a theory point. So it is saying that TempDB database is configured to auto grow as needed. So auto grow options are configured for the TempDB database, and due to this auto growth options enabled for this TempDB database, and due to which the database may be unexpectedly grow in time or expectedly grow in time to size larger than the desired size. And due to this auto growth option, it may grow beyond its desired size. And large TempDB database sizes do not adversely affect the performance of SQL Server, but yeah, it do affects but not adversely affects the performance of SQL Server. And what happens when we restart SQL Server services? So when the SQL Server services restart, TempDB is recreated by using copy of model database. So whenever we restart the SQL Server service, the TempDB is recreated by using a copy of a model database, and it is reset to its last configured size. So whenever a restart of SQL Server happens, the TempDB is recreated and it is reset to its last configured size. So what is the last configured size? The last configured size is the last explicit size that was set by using a file size changing operation such as alter database with the modify file option on the DBCC shrink file or the DBCC shrink database statements. So whatever size we have set it to using the either the alter database command or the DBCC shrink file command or the DBCC shrink database command, whatever size we set, it is set to that size after the SQL Server services restarted. So first of all, it is recreated and then its size is set to the last configured size. These two operations happens during SQL Server services restart. And it is generally recommended unless we want an immediate resolution to the TempDB database. So unless it's absolutely essential or unless it's absolutely immediate, we should wait for the SQL server services to restart for the size to decrease. If it's absolutely essential to reduce the size of the TempDB, maybe the disk space is becoming 0 or something like that, then yeah, in those immediate situation you can immediately restart SQL server services or may perform many of the operations given above like alter, shrinkdb and shrinkfile, etc. And TempDB database can be shrunk while the activity is going on in the database. So it can be shrunk while the activity is being performed on the database, and it is generally recommended to perform this shrink operation when the database is in single user mode. So ideally it's better to shrink the DB by taking the database to a single user mode before doing any shrinkdb operation, or when we have stopped all the TempDB activity, or unless all TempDB activity is stopped, we should wait till that time. Otherwise we should take our database in single user mode so that we can perform a shrink operation on the database. Otherwise we may experience some blocking and deadlocks. We will talk about blocking and deadlocks in one of our other videos. Maybe I already have videos on that, or otherwise if they are not there, I will create some for you. So this information regarding deadlocks and blocking will be covered later. And let's go to next point, which is SQL Server only records enough information to roll back the transaction. So what's stored inside the TempDB log file? So it basically records enough information to roll back a transaction, but not to redo any transaction during database recovery. Now let's go through some of the demos. The first demo will be alter database command to shrink a TempDB database. How to use alter database command. So let me show you the demo. So let's go to SQL Server. Let me open it. So once it is opened, we'll connect to the database. So it's open now. Let's connect to it. And the alter database commands, so we will use sample DB here. So the alter database command operates only on the default TempDB logical files, which are tempdev and templog. Let me show you that file. So under system databases, we will find the TempDB database. If we go to properties, right now we see under the file section on the left hand side, there are many TempDB files allocated to this database, the TempDB database. So, but these two are the main ones, the tempdev and templog. These are the additional files created under the primary file group, as the auto growth is set to unlimited. These files are being created as the initial file is not accommodating the data. It creates any additional files with the same size. And if we use the alter database to set the file sizes, it will only work on these tempdev and the templog files. And if any more files which are temp2 to temp8 which are added to the TempDB, we can shrink them after we restart SQL Server as a service. So the other files can only be shrunk when we restart SQL Server as a service, and all TempDB files are recreated during startup. However, they are empty and can be removed. So whenever we restart SQL Server, all these files become empty if they have any data. And if the files are empty, some of the files can be removed, like these additional temp files that are added to the database. And to remove any additional files, we can use the alter database command with the remove file option. So let me show you how you can do this. So let's use the alter database statement method. So what I'm doing right now is I'm stopping SQL Server. I'm closing the SQL Server Management Studio. Let's go to services. Open the services app. Go to MS SQL Server or Microsoft SQL Server. So these are SQL Server services, and this is the default instance of SQL Server. Let me stop this service to stop the SQL Server. So SQL Server is stopped now. Now what we will do, we will start the SQL Server is in the minimum configuration mode. So how to do that? So first of all, we need to determine where the SQL Server is installed. So in order to do that, you need to go to C drive and you need to go to program files. After that, there's a folder for Microsoft SQL Server, and this is our instance that we are using. So what we need to do is we need to go to this particular folder after opening the command prompt. So let me quickly open the command prompt and change the directory to this location. So copy this location and put it here, put a space in between. So I'm inside SQL Server location, so under that I need to go to the instance folder, which is this. Now I'm inside the instance folder. So under the instance folder there is an MS SQL folder. Go inside that. Under that there is a bin folder. Bin folder basically contains the binary files, and here we need to run the binary file SQL Server exe. So let me type that SQL Server. So this is the executable for SQL Server exe, and we need to put the -s, and then we need to specify the instance name. In our case it's MS SQL Server, which you can obtain from the services. So this is the instance name, MS SQL Server. We can specify this name, but if it's a default instance we can omit it as well. So -s option is not required here if we are not using the instance, if we are not specifying the instance basically. So instead we can use the -c option, -f option, and along with that you need to use the msql command. So what's the use of this -c and -f parameters here, these ones? So this allows SQL Server to start in a minimum configuration mode that has a TempDB size of 1 MB for the database file and 0.5 MB for the log file. So if we use the -c and -f switch, it allows us to start the SQL Server in minimum configuration mode where the TempDB data file size is 1 MB and 0.1 MB is allocated for the log file. And the msql command parameter prevents any other applications. So the last parameter, what's the role of this? It basically prevents any other applications from SQL command from taking over the single user connection. So none of the applications can connect to SQL Server if we are using msql command. So let's press enter. So SQL Server is now starting up. So it was giving us, it is giving us some errors. So it is not able to open some registry key. Let's start the command prompt in the administrative mode. Maybe there is some permission issues. So let's start the SQL Server in command prompt in administrative mode. So let's paste this here. Produce instance, and under that go to ms SQL folder, and that go to bin directory and type the SQL Server or exe -c -f -m SQL commands. Press enter. Now the SQL Server is started. So command prompt should be open with the administrative console. So now we see that it is showing that SQL Server is listing on certain port. So that shows us that SQL Server is restarted or started, although we are getting some errors, but yeah, SQL Server is started. And now let's see what has to be done. As we are able to connect to SQL Server, we need to open the another command prompt to use the SQL command. So let me open up. One window is used to connect to the SQL Server database. Another one can be used to issue the command. So let me start another command prompt in the administrative mode, and let's go to the same folder. So if we go to the same folder, this, and under that ms SQL cd, let's see, we need to go into the instance name, which is this, and under that ms SQL folder is there, under that bin directory is there. So cd bin. Now we can check the executables present inside this folder. So dir, you can do start.exe. So here we will see we have a SQL command exe is not available here, but yeah, let's see if we can we don't need to go into this folder as well. So what we need to do is let's see if we have a SQL command available. So you need to type SQL command SQL cmd, and after that you can issue any alter database statement. So I have maximized the screen. Let's issue the alter database statement to alter the TempDB. So specify the name of TempDB, which is TempDB, and we are modifying the files. Modify file option we are using. And next is we need to specify the details of the files which we are modifying. So the name of the file is, the data file is tempdev, which we are modifying, and what we want its size as, its size is defined as 8 MB. So we can set it to like let's set it to 50 MB. So let's put it here and put a semicolon after the statement termination, and also put another statement. We are also modifying the log file, so put alter database statement and the same database TempDB and the modify file. So I don't know how to go to previous line. After name I have put minus, so let's cancel this out. Let's again do the SQL command and type our statements again. So alter database, we are modifying TempDB and we are doing modify file operation. So after modify file we need to specify the details. So now it's correct. We are modifying the TempDB file. We are allocating size of 50 MB to this file, and after that put a semicolon, and after that you can specify the go command to execute this statement. So let's execute this. So I think this is executed. Now let's issue another alter database command, modifying TempDB and modifying the file, and need to specify the details. Name equals this time we are modifying temp log. Let's set its size to 25 MB, half the size of that data file. So let's set 25 MB. Let's put go to execute this block. So this, both of these are executed. Now we are done here and we can exit out of this and close this as well. Now to exit out of SQL Server or to stop the SQL Server in this window, what you can do, you can type Control C. This will stop the SQL Server. So SQL Server is now disconnected. Okay, it is throwing us some errors, but yeah, let's check if we are able to connect to the database or we need to close this window altogether. Starting up SQL Server. So okay, it is saying the SQL Server is single user mode. So let's close this command window. Now let's try to connect. And also make sure the SQL Server service is started. So it's not started here, so we need to start the service as well. After that I think it can connect to the database. So now the service is started, we can check the TempDB. We had set the sizes of the TempDB, TempDev and the temp log files. So if you expand this the files, you can see the TempDev is set to 50 MB and the temp log is set to 25 MB. So this is how you can set the size through the minimum configuration mode of SQL Server using the command prompt and the SQL command utility to modify its size. So now let's take a look at another method which uses the DBCC shrink database. This is the next demo now. So we are coming into this. The first demo is completed, which used the alter database command to shrink the TempDB database. So basically we haven't shrinked it, but yeah, we have increased the size, but similarly you can decrease the size as well if you feel it. Now let's use the DBCC shrink database command to shrink the TempDB database. Before that, let's discuss in our first demo we have shown you how you can increase the size, but yeah, if you want to shrink the database, you need to decrease the size of the files. In our case, the file size was very small, which was 8 MB, so reducing it further doesn't make any sense. So instead of reducing, we have increased it. But if it's a shrink database operation, ideally you decrease the size of the file, initial file size basically. Now let's come to another demo, which is DBCC shrink database command to shrink the TempDB database. How to use it? Let's go to SQL Server. So you need to open up a new query, and basically the DBCC shrink database command uses a parameter which is target percentage, and the syntax is DBCC shrink database, and we need to specify the name of the database, the logical name of the database, which is TempDB here, and target percentage. Now what is target percentage here? So what target percentage defines, and this is basically the desired percentage of free space left in a database file. So if our file size is 25 MB and if we want like 40% free space to be allowed in file, what we will specify here is 40, which is the target percentage. We want 40% files to of the total file of 25 MB to remain 40% free. So this is the desired percentage of free space in a database file after the database file is shrunk. If you use DBCC shrink database, you may have to restart the SQL Server. But let's see. Let's execute it. So it is saying that the file does not have enough free space to perform or reclaim free space. So file does not have free space basically. So ideally we use this command if we have performed some large deletions in the database, or if we have removed a big table. So we generally do DBCC shrink if there are chances of recovering some space from the database files or database altogether. But in this case there's no free space to reclaim, as the messages are suggesting, so it has not shrunk anything. But yeah, the syntax to use the DBCC shrink database is this. So before even performing this operation, what we will do basically is we determine the space that is currently used by TempDB. So in order to do that, we can use the stored procedure sp space used. This is the stored procedure which you can run to get the details. The TempDB is selected, so it runs on the current database. So TempDB is showing the database size is 131 MB because there are multiple files allocated to it, so database size is large. So 50 plus 8 times 8 is 8, 7, 8 is 56, 56 and 50, it comes down to 106. So the database size here showing is 131 MB, and unallocated space from that database is 103 MB. It is showing the reserved space, reserved space for the database, and the data space used by the data inside the file. Index is consuming this much amount of space. Unused space is just 464 KB. So this is how you can obtain the space information from the database. So this must be used before you perform any shrink operation. So basically this provides us the percentage of free space to be used as a parameter for the next statement. So what percentage should be used here is determined from the sp space use command. And this stored procedure can also be used with another parameter, which is the update usage, and minus true can be used. So let's execute this. Not equals to true should be the statement. So update usage equal to true, we can use with that. So it updates the usage. So this basically provides us an updated report. And now let me give you an example. Suppose our TempDB has two files, the primary data file, which is the maybe TempDB MDF, and so I'm giving you an example. Suppose our temp database has some file which is tempdb.mdf, which is a primary data file, and if its size is 1024 MB, right? So basically this is, I'm telling you how you can calculate how much percentage to be specified here. So if our database has a primary data file which is tempdb MDF, that is 1024 MB, and also a log file which is tempdb.ldf, that is 360 MB. Now let's assume that sp space used store procedure, that primary data file contains the like 600 MB of data, which is basically specified by this column. I'm not talking about this example here, but I'm taking a fictitious example here where the actual size of the file is 1 GB, and out of that the 600 MB is showing that is space consumed by data here, and or maybe we can take it as 800, suppose. So 800 is the space showing up in the data column. So 800 MB is used by the data, and we want to shrink the primary data file. We want to shrink the primary data file to 600 MB. From 800 we want to shrink it to 600. So what we will do here is, how we will calculate the desired percentage. So first of all, so how to calculate the desired percentage? You can use this formula. Desired percentage will be equal to difference of that 800 minus 600, which is divided by 800. So which comes down to 200 divided by 800, which is equivalent to 25%. So in this scenario we will use 25% over here. And this is our target percentage. The transaction log file is shrunk accordingly. So in our operation we just shrink the primary database file. The transaction log file also shrunk accordingly and leaves the 25%, all the 200 MB of disk free space after the database is shrunk. So in this fictitious example, if we shrink the primary data file, the secondary data file also gets shrunk by 25%. And we have just shown you how to run this command, so that is okay. And there are certain limitations with the DBCC shrink database command on the TempDB. The target size for the data and log files cannot be smaller than the sizes specified. So there is some initial file size set on a database file, which can be determined through this file section. Files cannot be made smaller than, for example, the tempdev cannot be made smaller than 50 MB. Similarly, the templog cannot be made smaller than 25 MB. So it cannot be reduced below the initial specified size. when the database was created, or smaller than the last size that was explicitly set by using a file changing operation. So we had used the file changing operation to set the size earlier to 50 MB and 25 MB. So that was the explicit operation where the file size was set. So it cannot be shrink below that size. So for example, the primary data file in this case cannot be shrunk below 50 MB, and the log data file cannot be shrunk below 25 MB. This will remain the minimum size of these files. So file changing operations are alter database that uses the modify file option. And another limitation of DBCC shrink database is the calculation of the target percentage parameter and its dependency on the current space that is being used. So another instance is you need to check the space before you do any shrinkage. So these are the two basic limitations. Now let's come to our third demo, which is using the DBCC shrink file command to shrink the TempDB files individually. So in the earlier command we have shrank the whole database, where the transaction log also shrunk accordingly or shrinks accordingly. But in this case, if we want to shrink the individual file, like individually the data file and individually the log file, we can use the shrink file operation instead. So let's take an example here. Before that, let's change the size of these files. I'm making this as 100 MB and this one as 50 MB. So I'm doing an explicitly file size change operation. So this will now be the initial size of the file. So let's click OK. File is changed. So now let's open up a new query. And we basically use the DBCC shrink file option, which is basically used to shrink the individual TempDB files, and it provides more flexibility than the DBCC shrink database operation, because you can use it on a single database file without affecting any other files that belong to the same database. And DBCC shrink file also receives the target size parameters. So how to use this? You need to start a bracket and put the name of the file which you want to shrink. So put a logical name. So I'm putting tempdev as the file. So we have set the size of the tempdev to 100 MB. So we wanted to set it to target file size of 75 MB now. So it cannot be reduced, right? Initial file size cannot be reduced. So let's see what is the SP space used saying here. So SP space used is saying that the database size is 206 MB. So this can be reduced. Unallocated space is 153 MB. And it is saying that, so if we want like target percentage is 125, not the percentage but the target size in MB. So if we want the same operation through task shrink files, right? Now we see the file name tempdev, it is currently allocated space is 100 MB, available free space is 96 MB. We can run this operation through here as well, but I'm doing the SQL stuff, so we can specify the target size parameter here, which is the desired final size for the database file. And how to determine the desired size for the primary data file, the log file, and any additional files that are added to a TempDB, make sure that the space that is used in file is less than or equal to the desired target size. So let's run this command and see what happens. So it is giving us some details like the tempdev, which are database ID of 2, the file ID is 1 for this file. Current size of this file is 12800. Minimum size is 6400. Not sure whether it's in bytes or something. Now it is showing us the size after performing operation, so it reduced the current size by 25%. So you see, it reduces the initial size of the file here. So similarly, you can increase the file space here as well. If we increase this to 125, it increases the space to 125 for TempDB here in the file section. So it can be reduced, not increased. So from 75, if we want to decrease it to 50, it will do that. So it has reduced the size again to 50. Now let's set it back to 100, which can be done from here. So yeah, the size is increased now. So the shrink file operation can be used to set the initial file size, or we can specify the target size we want to set it to in MB. And we are done with this, and so this was done for so now the size is set to 100 MB. Now let's again run this command to decrease the size to 50 MB, and what we will do, we will also run the same command to shrink the log file, which is temp log, and we are reducing it to 25 from 50. So let's run both the command. So both the file sizes are reduced, and we can check it here in the console as well. So file size is now 50 MB and this one is 25 MB. So we are done with this, and the advantage of using the DBCC shrink file is that it can reduce the size of a file to a size that is smaller than its original size. So this is one of the benefits, and we can issue a DBCC shrink file or any of the data or log files, and you can't make the database smaller than the size of the model database. Okay, so these are this is one of the limitations. You can't make the database smaller than the size of the model database, but here there are some advantages as well, like you can reduce the size of a file to a size that is smaller than its original size, and this operation can be performed on any of the data or log files. And sometimes you get one of the errors which is mentioned here, error 8909, while performing this shrink database operation. And basically, if TempDB is being used and if we try to shrink a file by using the DBCC shrink database or a SHRINKFILE operation, you may receive a message that resembles like this: 8909, table error, object ID 0, index 1, partition ID this, page ID this, contains an incorrect page ID in its page header. So this is the message you will get sometimes while performing a shrink database or shrink file operation. So what this error refers to basically. Let's explain that. So basically it is showing contains an incorrect page ID in its page header. So this doesn't generally indicate that there is a corruption in TempDB. It does not indicate that there is a corruption in TempDB. However, there might be other reasons for physical data corruption, as like error 8909, and those reasons include IO subsystem problems. So if we get this error, there may be an issue of IO subsystem problems. Therefore, some more investigation is required. It may refer to some issue with your IO devices. Although this message is returned to the application or to the user who is executing the shrink operation, the shrink operation don't fail. So this is a general error where it does not indicate an operation failure, but it just gives us a warning, maybe indicating something bad is there with the IO system or something, but it doesn't necessarily fails the shrink TempDB operation. So guys, we are done. In case you need the copy of these notes, please send me an email with the subscribed proof. You can subscribe to my channel by clicking on the subscribe button below my video, and right next to it there is a bell icon. Select all notifications to get all notifications regarding my future videos. And once I receive your mail with this screenshot, example is this, like this, send me an email with this example. Once I get your email, I will send you the PDF copy of the notes in case you have not take down the notes during the discussion. So guys, waiting for your response. Please do like, share and comment, and also please subscribe to my channel, and you have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.